Okay, in this video, this is the third video on constituent structure. We're going to look at some tests that you can use for working out the constituent structure of a sentence. Now, if you look if you look at constituents, last time we looked at semantic properties, meaning properties. Now we're going to look at syntactic properties, so properties about the actual structure. And then we see that constituents have a number of syntactic properties that we can actually use to test two things. We can say, well, does a group of words form a constituent or not? And what type of constituent do we actually have then? Okay, now how can you tell what phrase you're dealing with? Now, the very first starting point is to think about the general structure of sentences, and the S here means sentence, and what you've got here, you've got a sentence and then an arrow, and that means you can think of a sentence of consisting of the following structure: a noun phrase, then there may be an auxiliary verb, but there definitely is a verb phrase, so the auxiliary in brackets is optional. But what this rule says is that every sentence consists of a noun phrase and a verb phrase. And that noun phrase is always going to be the subject of the sentence. Now, we've already seen a few times that there is a test to find out what the subject of a sentence is. So what you do is you find the verb, the finite verb, and the rest of the sentence. And then you ask the question, what or who, and then finite verb, rest of sentence, and the answer is the subject. So, you can find the subject noun phrase by doing this subject test. So let's have a look. In that man in the corner looks a bit scary. Yeah, the different possibilities. But you do the subject test, so you say, okay, what's the finite verb? Oh, we've got looks here. Yeah, that's the present third person singular form of look. So we can say, who or what looks a bit scary? And the answer to that question is that man in the corner. So that is the subject. Okay, let's try a second one. We've got that little boy likes to play football. What's the finite verb? Well, likes, yeah, again, third person singular present. So what's the subject? Well, we ask the question, who or what likes to play football? So who likes to play football? And the answer is that little boy. So that's the subject. Okay, so if we think back to that rule about sentences, you can say every sentence consists of a noun phrase, which is the subject, and a verb phrase. So this is the way to find the subject. Let's now look at a rule for finding the verb phrase. For the verb phrase, we can do the do-so test. And the do-so test goes as follows. Do so replaces the verb phrase. So you can have a sentence like, he played football, and the test then is to stick onto it, and you did so too. What did you do? You played football, and that's the VP. John has walked to school. Now here we've got has walked, so we've got the perfect auxiliary followed by a participle form. So we then we then use the do so test with, and you have done so too, yeah, because there is that auxiliary, and we're looking for a verb phrase, and the auxiliary is separate. So we use the auxiliary, you have, and then do the do so bit. So you have done so too, and then you can ask the question, what have you done? You have, and what follows says walk to school, and that's the verb phrase then. Okay, let's try this out. So in John gave a book to his friend, what is the VP? Well, try it out. John gave a book to his friend, and you did so too. Yeah, you can say did so too, because the tense in John gave a book to his friend is past tense. So you're saying John gave a book to his friend, and you did so too. What did you do? You gave a book to his friend. So that's the verb phrase. Okay, so now we have two tests. We can use the subject test to find what the subject is, and the verb, the do so test to find the verb phrase. And then we've got the two main phrases in a sentence. But we do find then other phrases within noun phrases and verb phrases, and you can find noun phrases within verb phrases. So we need some more tests to establish them. And a very good test for different phrases is the substitution test. Now, it has various forms, and to find noun phrases, you can substitute them by using a personal pronoun. So, if you've got something like John gave a book to his friend, yeah, you can replace John with a personal pronoun, he, and that shows that John is a noun phrase. He, by the way, is also a noun phrase. Pronouns we're going to deal with as a subcategory of noun, and they form their own noun phrase. And that's why you can do the substitution test. So, John you can replace with he, and that shows that John is a noun phrase. A book you can replace with it. John gave it to his friend. Yeah, so that's another noun phrase. And then his friend you can replace with her or him. Yeah. So that's another noun phrase. Yeah. So you can use a personal pronoun like he or it or her to find noun phrases in a sentence. So if you can replace a word or a stretch of words with a personal pronoun, then it must be a noun phrase. Okay, now we can also do substitution for prepositional phrases. And the forms that we use for those is there, and there replaces a prepositional phrase which denotes, which picks out a place or a path. So you can say he went to school, yeah, that's a sort of path, and you can say he went there. Now, if you can replace a stretch of words with words with there, yeah, then it's a prepositional phrase. And then replaces a prepositional phrase denoting time. So she arrived at 5 o'clock, you can say she arrived then. So if you can replace a stretch of words with there or then, and it contains a preposition, that's of course a prerequisite, then it must be a prepositional phrase. Yeah. Now, you have to be careful with this, because if you can't replace it, that does not necessarily mean that it's not a prepositional phrase. It just means that it's not a prepositional phrase denoting a place or a time or a path. Okay, so that's the substitution test, where you can use pronouns to replace noun phrases, and there and then to replace prepositional phrases. How do you recognize an adverb phrase? Of course, we've got two types of adverbs. So if the head of the phrase is a degree adverb, yeah, then the adverb phrase, yeah, the degree adverb phrase will occur either inside an adjective phrase. So if you've got an adjective like pretty, yeah, you can have an adjective phrase very pretty, where the adverb phrase is inside that adjective phrase, yeah, because it says something about pretty. It gives a degree of prettiness. The other possibility is that the adverb phrase occurs inside another adverb phrase. So if you've got stupidly as the head, yeah, of an adverb phrase, then you can say rather stupidly. Yeah, so the degree adverb has its own phrase, rather, and it modifies, it says something about stupidly. So it's inside a larger adverb phrase with stupidly as the head. Now, what we say then is that this adverb phrase, you know, the adverb phrase of the degree adverb, modifies the meaning of the adjective or the adverb. Yeah, so rather than saying that someone's pretty, you're saying they're very pretty. Yeah, so very modifies the meaning of pretty. and saying, you know, he did something, he behaved rather stupidly. You know, you're saying he didn't behave stupidly, he just behaved rather stupidly. It's not quite as bad. Now, you can actually have an adverb phrase inside another adverb phrase headed by a degree adverb. So, for example, you could say, that was rather extremely stupid. Yeah, so what you're saying about the stupid was that it had a certain degree, and the degree was rather extremely. Yeah. Okay. So that's where you have a degree adverb. But of course, most adverbs are other adverbs. And of course, other adverbs all have their own adverb phrase. And the way to tell, we said about how do you recognize adverbs. Well, they can often move around the sentence, so at least move to the beginning or the end. Now, actually, what you're moving is not just the adverb, it's the whole adverb phrase. Often that just consists of only the adverb, the head, yeah, but it doesn't have to. So if you look at these sentences, the boy ran out of the door very quickly. The boy ran very quickly out of the door. The boy very quickly ran out of the door. Very quickly the boy ran out of the door. Yeah, so you very quickly is an adverb phrase, and you can have it in different places in the sentence. Yeah, sometimes adverb phrases won't fit into all of these places, but usually they can go at least at the beginning and the end of a sentence. Now, the important thing is that they can't interrupt other constituents. Yeah, so you can't say something like the boy ran out very quickly of the door. And that's because out of the door is a prepositional phrase. You can't just stick an adverb phrase somewhere in the prepositional phrase. And similarly, you can't say the very quickly boy ran out of the door, because the boy is a noun phrase, and you know the adverb phrase can't interrupt that noun phrase. Yeah, but other than that, you can try moving the adverb phrase around the sentence to see whether you're actually dealing with an adverb phrase. And that's called a movement test. How about adjective phrases, APs? These are all the abbreviations. Yeah? An AP is an adjective phrase. Now, adjective phrases, actually, where we've been saying, oh, the adjective occurs in certain places, really what we have been looking at is adjective phrases. So adjective phrases occur in two places, either before a noun, as in the boring movie, yeah, or the very smooth paper, or after a copular verb. Yeah, so we can say this paper is very smooth, or the movie is boring. Yeah, so really what we've been saying about adjectives really applies to adjective phrases. Okay, well there is another test that we can use, and that's the conjunction test. Now, conjunction involves the word and. Remember, that's a conjunction. And what and does is it takes two constituents of the same type, so either two words or two phrases, and gives you another constituent of the same type. So you can say the long and boring movie. Yeah. Now there it's not so clear whether you're actually conjoining two adjectives or two adjective phrases. So if we make the adjective phrase a bit longer by using a degree adverb, then we can say, well, look here, we can say this paper is white and very smooth. Now that means that because very smooth must be an adjective phrase, yeah, because it's more than one word. Yeah, so the head is the adjective smooth, and very is an adverb phrase with the degree adverb very in it, so that modifies smooth. Now, very smooth is a whole adjective phrase, And so why must also be an adjective phrase. Yeah, so that's the conjunction test. By having something that you're sure about being a phrase, you can test whether something else is a phrase of the same type. So you can do that with other sorts of phrases. So you can say Mary did that very easily, because easily is the head here. It's an adverb, so very easily is an adverb phrase. So you can say Mary did that quickly and very easily. That shows you that quickly must also be an adverb phrase. Okay, let's just do one little test with it. My father took his car to the auction in Stevenage. What's to the auction in Stevenage? Is it a noun phrase? Well, can you replace it with a personal pronoun? Yeah, the substitution test. My father took his car. It. Now that doesn't make sense. You can't just replace to the auction in Stevenage with it, so it's not a noun phrase. Is it a verb phrase? Well, there's no verb in it. Yeah, so it can't be a verb phrase. Is it a prepositional phrase? Well, the first word is to, that's a preposition, and prepositional phrases always start with a preposition, so that's a good, that's a good beginning. Now, we could use that substitution test for prepositional phrases here to do with place. So we could say, my father took his car there. Where's there? To the auction in Stevenage. So what that shows is that what we've got here is a prepositional phrase.